Hey fans, viewers, and listeners, welcome to another exciting episode of Fight Insight Podcast. I'm your host for today, Raine Cruz, also known as Ringside Raine, ring announcer for Up Next Fighting. And with me as always is Timmy B. Before we get things started, please do follow and subscribe to Fight Insight Podcast to get the latest news and updates from our show. Our guest for today is MMAfighting.com's Mike Heck. We will talk about the media's role in the world of mixed martial arts, and we will dive into Jon Anik's apology. All that and more. So, Tim, what are we waiting for? Hit it! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Fight Insight Podcast.
Our guest today, I've been waiting to have this guy on for a very, very long time. He's an MMA reporter, a journalist, a multimedia producer, and editor, and he's currently working for the very well-known and immensely popular. If you're watching this podcast, you watch him. He's on MMAfighting.com with a goal to cover the sport of mixed martial arts as fairly and professionally as possible. He's been a long-standing voice for MMA journalism, delivering breaking news and interviews all about the fighters and their stories. He hosts Heck of a Morning and Between the Links on YouTube and is the co-host of On to the Next One. Check them all out after you watch this podcast. But today, he is the guest. Today, Raine, we ask him the questions. Let's talk to him about the role of media in MMA and all that goes along with it. Raine, bring him in.
Please welcome Mike. What the heck?
Great to be here. What an introduction. I could tell you're a cage announcer, a ring announcer, just based on that introduction. So, and I haven't heard the what the nickname in quite some time. So thank you. It's great to be here, guys.
It is very good. Mike, thank you so much for joining the podcast. I said it before we started, but I will say it officially on air so you can tell people this was true. But you are truly one of the greats in MMA media in terms of someone that just keeps it real. You know, you seem like a stand-up guy. You seem like a good guy. Why have you not been corrupted by all the evilness of the world, Mike? Why are you still a good man?
Family. I got a 10-year-old, so I want him to just understand that you don't have to be corrupted into the negativity. And as you both probably know, there's enough of that in this space. And when you say I keep it real, that's part of the goal, right? Like, you could be critical without being an absolute dink about it. And that's sort of one of the things that I take pride in, because in every other sport, like if Tom Brady has a terrible game, they don't go on, oh, well, at least Tom tried his best. No, they say like, no, he was awful. And the reason the Patriots aren't playing the Super Bowl or the Bucs didn't make it to the playoffs because he played awful. And I think it's fair to criticize certain things without being completely disrespectful about it. So yeah, I think it's okay to do that in this sport too. If this sport needs to be compared to the NFL and the NHL and the NBA and Major League Baseball, like the coverage needs to be just like it. And I think it's a little bit tougher in this space, as both of you could probably attest to.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's been so many things. Like I said, I've been trying to get you on for a long time because there's something always that happens, especially in MMA. I do feel like in MMA more than any other sport, there's always the next drama going on. Like weekly, Mike, there's always something. So every time I've thought of having you on, I'm like, I'm going to talk to him about this. A week goes by. No, this. No. Now this. Like there's always something. I want to ask you though, you've been in journalism for so long. Do you ever feel like that you can't really delve into subject matter as much as you'd like because the next thing is hitting the news cycle? Like, do you ever feel like, oh, I would have loved to have spent more time on this, but I got to move on?
Not really. I mean, like the things that I really like take the time in doing is like, I'm mostly on to be a broadcaster more than anything else. Like I got shows to host, and I think because of like most of the shows that I host, and I wanted to make it like a really big thing when I got to MMA fighting, was like, I want the people to be involved. Like I want them asking questions. I want to give them a voice because the ones that have been with us since I got there, like continue to stick around. So even if something, I guess, fades off and the next thing happens, it doesn't mean we can't still talk about it, because, you know, with all the shows that we host, there's a lot of Q&A stuff. I do the Heck of a Morning on Twitter. So it's just people, it's like a call-in radio show. So people want to talk about something that we mentioned 2 weeks ago, we could still do it. So there are certain things that like I wish didn't really fade off into the distance. But I mean, there's also things that happened a year ago that we still don't have answers to, like the James Krause situation. Like we don't even know what the hell's going on with that. It just happened and everyone wanted to know about it. And now we're just like, okay, now what's happening? So I don't think anything in this sport is actually like buried altogether, but I just think because it moves so quickly, it just, look, UFC 297 had a ton of storylines, especially the main event, but we had a week to digest it all. And now the UFC is going to be back and going full bore into 298. Like that stuff's like over now until we figure out like what's next for both guys. We go back and revisit that fight between Dricus du Plessis and Sean Strickland. So yeah, it does move quickly. The news cycle doesn't wait for anybody, and there is no off season in MMA, even when there's really the 3-week, reprieve between Christmas and New Year's and all that. So I don't think anything really ever goes away, but there are certain things that I take really deep dives into, and you just got to kind of pick and choose your battles, I guess.
Yeah. No, rightfully said, Mike. I like it because, see, this guy's a consummate professional, Raine, because my question, I can tell at the beginning, he's like, that's a stupid question. But then he like made it into a good answer.
No, so it's a good question. Look, this is not like any other sport. This is totally different.
Yeah. No, but you're right, Mike, because actually you're right. This is the only sport without an off season. And as much as that impacts the athletes, it also impacts the media because the media has no off season. So like you're constantly going on to the next thing. You're very right about the James Krause thing. We had 2 athletes that trained under James Krause on this podcast to talk about it as that story went along. Alexa Culp and then Isaac Belgarian. We had a couple of them. We talked about the story, and it's crazy. Like, yeah, you don't even know what's happened to that. Another one I'll say that's just brought up was the Cain Velasquez. We had a defense attorney, a criminal defense lawyer come on to explain the charges when it happened and talked about all of it was. And now like he's gotten on parole. Apparently he was supposed to have his trial like this month, but like nothing's happened. He showed up at UFC last week and people were like, yes, he's here. And I'm like, do you guys think he's out? Like, this is not what's happening, but nobody knows. I can't find anything on that story.
Yeah, I mean, I know he's got his next court date set, but yeah, I mean, I don't think he's not parole, but he was able to get bail after all that time.
Bail.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, this could be something that drags on like a whole other year, potentially,
I think so,
depending on how this all plays out. So yeah, when you're dealing with criminal law and then you're throwing the MMA mix into it all, it's a recipe, all right. That's for sure.
It definitely is. I'm going to ask you just a bunch of media questions because we had lots of people write in. Is it hard to stay excited for some things, like where you have to promote something or asking questions? Is it hard for you? Does it ever get daunting on you? Let's say if something's really kind of blah, or are you just always able to find something to kind of enjoy in the moment?
I mean, look, there are certain times where, and I remember when Brendan Fitzgerald said it on like a random fight night last year. He was like, all right, guys, here's the schedule. We got 17 straight weeks of fights for you guys to look forward to. And I'm like, what? 17 straight weeks? And look, I know that it seems like maybe I'm complaining, and I'm absolutely not. But at the same token, like most of these are at the world's most famous Apex, which there's no energy in that building, like ever. Yeah. And when you're seeing the same thing, and at first it was cool because you're hearing the thuds of all the punches and all that stuff. And then it ain't going anywhere. And I think that's kind of like the more frustrating part about it, but it does get real sloggy at times where you're just like, okay, now we have this card with like 18 Contender Series fighters, like fighting for the first and second time in their UFC careers. And then guess what? Next week, we're back at the world's most famous Apex with an okay main event with like very little stakes and then a whole bunch of those fights again. So sometimes it can kind of wear on you and you're just like, oh, get me to a pay-per-view so I can go think about something else. But at the same token, like the cool thing about working for MMA Fighting is that they have given me the chance to basically do what I want. I don't mean it to come off like that, but like if I have an idea and I have a suggestion, I'm like, I want to try this. They're like, yeah, try it. Or I think this would be cool to try. They're like, yeah, go do it. Like now we're doing the watch party. So I get to leave this space at least once a month and go to New York and go in the studio and do the watch party. So like, luckily in my position, there's always something to talk about. And yeah, it does get a little sloggy, like covering events, especially when they're not very good events. And we'll be the ones to tell you. Like Morning Combat, I talk to BC from Morning Combat a lot. He always tells me, like, it's between us where we're like, hey, this event could be fun to watch, but on paper, it's not good. And there's only like so much you could do with that. And you just hope that on Saturday night, the fighters are going to go in there and leave it all in there. And we respect the hell out of that. But you're the biggest organization in the world. There's a certain expectation that people have. And I think it's okay to criticize if you haven't met that. So yeah, it does get a little sloggy with the coverage covering these events when there's just not a lot of storylines that come out to it, because the goal of Saturday night for fight night is you want something to talk about on Sunday and Monday. And when you don't have that, it gets a little tough. It definitely does.
Yeah. I'm going to show you something. I thought this was so weird, Mike. I put it on my Instagram. Did you watch the PFL Bellator press conference?
No, I did not.
You didn't? Okay. Don't worry. I'm not judging.
I saw some clips. It was going on during the MMA hour, and it's very tough to do both.
There you go. There's your choice. Now, there's a point in it, Mike, where they're asking the media people in the audience, obviously, for questions. And there's this one point where you hear a girl go, it goes dead silent. The last question is answered. It goes dead silent. And then you hear a girl kind of like over a PA system or go, Harry on Zoom. And like everybody's dead silent. And like they're waiting for this guy that I guess is on Zoom and he's not doing it. And it happens like multiple times. I'm like, what's going on here? There's no crowd reaction. There's nothing. I'm thinking even when she does that, maybe people would laugh, but there's nothing. And then here's a picture of someone that was behind. Look how empty this arena is. Like
that.
It was crazy, Mike. And there's videos that show, and there's like a little bit of media like right at the front, kind of like right at the front of the stage, but it's empty. Is that a normal thing, Mike? That's my question to you. Do organizations run these media events with like no crowds? And like, why would you do that? Why would you not just bring in people off the street? People would want to see that.
So I don't even now that I think of it, I don't even know if they invited the public or they even gave them the opportunity to come. And look, the UFC has done the same thing. The Habib Conor pre-fight press conference. No, it was just media, no fans. I think there was a reason for that because they didn't want to get like too out of control.
What's going to happen? Yeah.
But I'm trying to remember, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I think the UFC 295 pre-fight press conference didn't have fans either. I think it was just because it was like a really small space in New York. And if there were people there, it was like they treated it like a golf event because you didn't hear any, certainly it was nothing like 296 and 297s where they're like in the big amphitheaters or the like MGM Grand or something like that. So, I mean, I don't know if they even invited fans, honestly. Like there are certain press conferences where the fans can come and then there's certain ones that are not. Like the UFC does a lot of stuff on the fight night events and, the media days is nobody there and things of that nature. So I honestly, like, even after looking at the releases before, I don't remember even saying like, oh, fans can come show up at this time. Maybe it wasn't meant to be that way. And then, when they said Harry, at least when I got the invite, it was a virtual media day for us. So like, if you couldn't make it to Florida, you could do it virtually. And I know Bellator has done that in the past. And I don't know if PFL has done that, but it seems like they have. UFC, obviously, during the pandemic, did the virtual media days, which were tough scenes. But yeah, maybe that's just kind of what happened. Maybe they didn't give the option for the fans to go. It was just a media-only event.
Okay, Mike, to be fair, let's pray to God they didn't give the option, because if they did give the option and you got nobody, that's a real problem. But if it was a golf thing, I mean, at least you'd hear the odd Baba Booey. But like, you didn't even get that. There was like literally dead silence. Neither of you know what I'm talking about, Baba Booey?
Yeah, Howard Stern.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
Gary Dell'Abate, producer extraordinaire.
Yeah. Raine, what questions do you have for Mr. Mike? What the heck?
So I have two questions for you. One, now that we talked about the virtual pressers, right? And for the most part, before the pandemic, we had the press present basically at the event. Which one would you prefer? Because I know with like if you have to be present, you have to travel. right? Then you have to be like right next to everyone, right? Trying to put your microphone up. Whereas with Zoom, I guess you guys can just take turns.
That's true. I guess if I'm going to cover something like that, I'd rather be there in person.
Uh-huh.
I just like the ambiance and the feeling of it. But at the same time, like one thing that the pandemic taught me as far as a media member goes is that I can cover these events from 2,000 miles away
Mhm.
just as well as I could if I'm in the building. So yeah, they do offer that opportunity to be virtual. And I like, honestly, I think that kind of hurt the promotions a little bit by offering that opportunity. And then because like Bellator is part of the PFL umbrella now, but there were times where like we didn't go and cover events. Like, and I was living in Massachusetts at the time. And when they were at Mohegan, I think I only went to like one or two of them. And there were conversations had from time to time, like, you know, you're not that far. Why aren't you coming? And I'm just like, well, you're letting us do them virtually. And then you're giving us the videos after to like do stuff with. So, I mean, rather than have the company send me out and stay at a hotel, like I could just do it at my house and stay with my family and all of that stuff. So, I mean, it's a different world now. Like covering the sport is much different. Like if I never like covered a UFC event again, like I'd be fine. Like I'd be totally fine. And it's at the point now where because we're doing the watch parties, if I cover a fight week, like a big pay-per-view fight week, I don't even go to the fights anymore. Like I covered 292.
Wow.
I covered the Boston card in August and you know, it's my hometown. So of course I went and I turned it into an excuse to like see family members and stuff of that nature and did the media day, did the press conference, did the weigh-ins and ceremonials and all that stuff. And then I took a 5 a.m. flight to New York Saturday morning to go do the watch party. Like, and it was the best. It was the best. Cause I don't cover the events so I could go watch the fights up close. Like I go and, you know, talk to the fighters and talk to the coaches and like meet up with people and, you know, see my fellow colleagues like Jose, who I've met like 4 or 5 times in my life. Like I call AK Lee my best friend on all our shows and I've never met him in person, never once. Yeah. So it's nice to like meet up with all of them. But when it comes to fight night, like, do I care if I sit cage side for it? No, I'd rather sit in a studio with GC and act like an idiot when Sean O'Malley knocks Aljamain Sterling to the mat. So yeah. It's just a different time now. Like, was there a time like 5, 6, 7 years ago where I'd be like, yeah, I got to sit cage side for Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz vying for the BMF title? Sure. But it's a different world now. You can still enjoy the sport and still cover it and still be a part of that fight night buzz without actually being in the building.
I got to put up a little disclaimer at the bottom of this podcast, Raine. I'll try to do it in the post that says the opinions expressed by Mike Heck do not reflect the opinions of Fight Insight Podcast, who would like cage side seats to every UFC event. So don't.
Look, I've done it a few times. I brought up the Masvidal Diaz fight because I actually sat cage side for that fight at Madison Square Garden, but you know, it's just different now. Like you have different visions and different things, and you have different, like, there's just different vibes to fight night now than there was 3 or 4 years ago.
Nice.
I have a follow-up question. Now that you mentioned sitting cage side, have you ever gotten like blood or like sweat on you because you sat cage side?
No. Masvidal Diaz didn't last that long. Before that, it was the Darren Till Kellen Gastelum fight, and that's when I first got out there. And if you watch that fight, you realize there wasn't a lot of blood in that one. Wasn't a lot of action in that one either. No disrespect, gentlemen. But I was also, I think the last fight I watched cage side for the UFC was the Josh Emmett, Ilya Taporia UFC Jacksonville main event. I was out there for that. Okay. That was like a short drive. So I drove out hour and a half to go cover that. It was, I mean, just perfect. 11 a.m. start time, just the way you like it. And that fight was pretty brutal. And the fight right before that, the Macy Barber Amanda Hebus fight was pretty brutal too.
Oh, that was a good one. Yeah.
But I was sitting far enough back from the cage that no blood, no sweat. So we're good there.
I've gotten sweat so far. No blood yet.
Yes.
Sometimes just catch me like this. Cage side. So far just sweat on my, blazer or on my phone. But my other question for you is, was there ever a story wherein you actually said, "What the heck? How am I gonna write this?"
Oh man. So I mean, there's a few. There's a few where. So once in a while, I do these. I'm actually in the middle of working on one now that just got started, and it's like one of those mind blowing stories where you just kind of do an interview with somebody, and maybe they're not all that well known, and then you hear their stories, and you're just like, okay, there's more to this. Like, there's more to this that I'm not reaching. So the first one I ever did, we do like the big long form write-ups, and then I decided, like, you know what hasn't really been done in this space is rather than do like a video doc about the story, like we do an audio doc about the story, put it on the podcast network, and like we do it that way. And I did this story on this regional fighter. His name was Eugene Aubry. He just turned pro. I actually, one of the first like regional fight cards I had covered, Eugene actually fought on the card, and I remember him just annihilating a guy. And I knew his story was pretty wild. My old editor at the time told me that he was familiar with the guy, and he was so mad about his performance that he refused to talk to me. And I was like, okay. So I hadn't heard really from him since. I saw like some different clips. I knew he was starting to win and starting to get some traction. And then I found out that in Philadelphia, as things are starting to get good, he was doing well. He ended up getting shot and paralyzed from the waist down. So I had him on the show called What the Heck, as a matter of fact. Before the MMA Hour came back, I was doing an interview show for MMA Fighting. So he came on and told me the story about how everything went and what happened that night and how he's trying to recover. And that turned into like this whole thing, this whole story about his childhood and how he grew up, and, you know, him being homeless for a while, trying to pursue this dream of being an MMA fighter, even though everybody around him was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, go get a job and like make some money and put a roof over your head. And he's like, no, dude, I'm going to go sneak into a gym and sleep under the ring, or I'm going to go to the subway and sleep in the tunnel. Like, this is what he wanted to do, and he was willing to sacrifice it all. And then as all these stories are coming, and I remember this specifically, I talked to like his father, I talked to coaches, teammates, former opponents, things of that nature. And then I mean, this thing took me a month to like write up, and like, especially the audio part of it. That was like the toughest part, like getting all the different stories and like producing it the right way. And then the day before it's scheduled to release, we go to our legal department. We're like, can you guys just rifle through this and just see if we're good to go? And they told us there were some pretty tough stories about his mom, about his upbringing. And they're like, you got to reach out to his mom. And I was like, okay. So reach out to the dad. I'm like, do you have the mom's number? Because they're obviously not together anymore. And he's like, she's not going to do it. I'm like, that's fine if she doesn't want to do it, but I have to at least make the attempt to contact her. And if she says, nah, no comment, then fine. Like, I could say that we reached out. So he gives me her number, says, here it is. And I call her and I get nothing. So I'm just like, okay, we reached out. And then she called me back and we talked for an hour. And it was from the stories I had heard from her about her to what she told me in that call was like shocking. It was as what the heck as you could get. I was like, whoa, I was not ready for any of this stuff. So yeah, I basically had to like call an audible and like redo the whole thing, because we had to put her comments in, redo all the audio because we had to put the stuff that she said into the podcast. So like, that was insanity. That, like, my poor wife saw like the stress in my eyes for about a month straight trying to put this all together. But the story was just so insane. It's about a fighter that, you know, nobody's really ever heard of outside of maybe like the New England scene or like the tri-state area. And like, it's not one of those things that's going to get like 1 million views. It's not going to get a ton of views at all. But it's just one of those stories where I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe like this dude's life. Like, it's going to be a movie. It could be a movie someday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that was one of them. And then it's kind of escalated into a couple more stories about some different things. You know, from Elena Kolesnik, PFL fighter, escaping Ukraine to get to America so she could fight for PFL, to like some like really viral things that happened on the regional scene. like a broken arm in an amateur fight in Massachusetts to the scene at Fury FC last year where the fighter was submitted and he was unconscious and the referee allowed the fight to continue and then he broke his arm. So we did a whole feature on that. Like
we had that guy in our podcast. That's Gianni Vasquez, right?
Yes.
Oh yes,
he's the champion at Up Next Fighting where Raine is. And yeah, that was that crazy story. Insane.
Yep. So I did a whole thing on that with the Fury FC promoter. Gianni, even his opponent jumped on, Edgar Chairez. John McCarthy jumped on to like give some official insight, and then trying to deal with like the Texas Commission to see if they will comment on anything, which they refuse to. So it's like, it's a whole, you learn a lot doing features like that, talking to different people and seeing how they navigate through these different situations. And Johnny is just a gangster, man. That dude was like, and I was concerned about him in a number of ways because he's a full, like he trains full time. He's got to do private sessions. Like how the hell is this guy going to make money if his arm's in a sling and he can't train with these people? So it was just a whole bunch of stuff. And, I talked to him a few months back just to kind of get an update on where he's at. And I think it's right after he won the Up Next Fighting title, and he's still dealing with this. He's still dealing with everything with Texas and a potential lawsuit and all this stuff. Like the guy has just gone through so much, but he doesn't care. He just keeps going. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Shout out to Gianni Vasquez, because I know he watches this podcast. Gianni, we love you, man. And we can't wait to see him back. Mike, how annoying is, so you do all this great work, right? How annoying is it? This is just a side thing. When I open up Instagram and every page, breaking news, blah, blah, blah. Everybody feels that they are breaking the news. Mike, God damn it. Why don't they reference as seen on What the Heck or as seen on Heck of the Morning? Everybody acts as if they broke the news. One guy broke the news, you idiots. Stop using that term. Mike, do you agree with me on that?
It's definitely different now. Those social media pages, they're kind of tough to navigate because not only does that happen, and I've learned to just not let that stuff bother me anymore. When it comes to like, I'm not gonna be the guy that's like, oh, you should have credited me. Like, I think it's a conversation you could have behind the scenes. And there are certain times where like a big site has reported something that we reported first and they didn't do it, but I didn't go on Twitter and tag them and be like, hey, you didn't, a little private message, and I've had people like hit me up when I wrote something for MMA Fighting, like confirming news or like a promotional announcement for something. They're like, oh yeah, thanks for crediting me. I'm like, I'm one person. Like I can't see every page in the world. Like hit me up on DM. Like I'll make the correction. Like you don't have to do it in public. Yeah. But not only that, but sometimes you just get you get this news that is just like, what, where is this from? And then not only does one site post it, but then like 18 other sites will be like, oh, this is happening on this date. So now I'm like, oh man, now I have to take time out of my day to try to confirm this news, which 98% of the time is not true. Yeah, that's more frustrating than not getting credited. Is like fake fight announcements and all this other stuff. And then I have to waste time to try to like confirm if it's true or not. And most of the time it isn't. That's frustrating. That's frustrating with some of these pages, but hey, they're making money, then I guess power to them. But it drives me nuts.
Mike, this is the problem. They're not making money. That's what's even worse. They have no journalistic credibility, no nothing, and they're not making money. Like it's just so weird. It's such a weird world we live in. Mike, I know we're going a little bit long. I appreciate your time.
We're good.
Very quickly, I wanted to ask you one thing, or a couple last quick things. If you when we report stuff, right, on this podcast, we're on episode 156, I believe. We've been going 156 weeks straight. We have great guests on, great stories that we break sometimes, that we get very cool stories that I don't see around a lot. A couple have like hit the news, like a couple have got picked up by hot news sites. A tip just for me, Mike, how do I get my stuff into more mainstream news? Like, how do I make it so that people see my stuff more? Is there a trick?
I don't know. That's a great question. I have no idea. Like I've had, like when I was freelancing, I had a couple things that like fighting would pick up for like morning reports and stuff. Like, you do a random interview with like Aaron Pico and somehow like Dylan Dennis comes up and Aaron like talks about Dylan and then like it gets clipped off and then somebody sees it and it becomes a thing. Like, I don't like, I never really like tried for that, but
Mm.
sometimes like you just, 2016, 2017, you open up MMA Fighting's morning report and you see something like an interview I did for another site like pop up on there, and you're just like, oh, that's kind of cool. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's really just,
No.
if it's a great clip and people, you just, with this
Like
social media world, like someone needs to run with it, because, the one clip that friggin' like irks me to this day, which we didn't clip off, was when I interviewed Colby Covington and he talked about Jon Anik and like threatened him.
Yeah.
Like we obviously didn't clip that off. Like there's a behind the scenes. I was like, look, I let my editors know. I'm like, there's a part early on where Colby like says this thing about Anik, and I'm like, tell me what you want to do with this. Like, we could cut it, we could do whatever. And they're just like, yeah, just leave it in. Like, it's not a big deal. And then somebody clipped it off and it went freaking bananas. And I'm like, oh, man, like I didn't want this clip to go crazy. And then there's like a different clip of like my kid dressed as Spider-Man in a different interview with Colby, like just coming in and like coming on the screen, and Colby's like talking about how awful Jorge Masvidal is a person, but then my kid walks in as Spider-Man. He's like, hey, it's Spider-Man. He like turned Colby babyface in a matter of seconds, and that gets clipped off. And it's like, I don't know, like with social media accounts these days, if they find it and they think it's something that, especially with the engagement stuff on Twitter with the blue check marks and you can get money, like they'll just take it and they'll clip it. And then, a lot of those sites get like a lot of traction for some reason. So I guess that's just the best. Just keep doing it, and somebody will pick them up. I mean, I wish I had better advice. Just keep doing your thing.
Well, Mike, if you know some lousy journalists that are very lazy, just tell them to watch the Fight Insight podcast, because we always got good stuff, man. Like last week, Mike, I haven't heard anybody talk about it. We had on this guy. We had Assembly Member Matt Haney on, and he told us about the pension in California that he wrote the bill on.
Oh,
and
cool.
So we had him on. He's amazing. That dude is very cool. He wrote the pension. He talks about how he grew up renting Hoist Gracie fights from Blockbuster, and like now he's an Assembly member and he writes the bill and it becomes law, So anyways, if you have some, schlubs that need content, send them my way, Mike. I'm going to quickly ask you two last questions. You brought up the Jon Anik thing with the Colby thing and the complaint there. The recent stuff that happened with Jon Anik and the public at large. Can I get a slight take on that? I'm going to argue with Raine about it for the next half hour, but I want to know, you're a gentleman, you're a professional. What is your general take on that?
I've known Jon for a while. When I was freelancing, when my wife was like, go after this thing, Jon was one of the people that brought me on to his podcast. I wasn't like a guest or anything, but whoever's doing their video stuff at the time was not doing it anymore. So Ian Parker, who's on ESPN now, had reached out to me and said, hey, I know you're freelancing. You're looking to like fill your schedule. Maybe you can hop in and help us out. And I was like, yeah. So I got on a call with Anik, and, Jon and I like hit it off right away. Obviously, we're both guys from Boston, both love Boston sports, both are bald at this point in our lives. And we both have like a very similar work ethic where it's like, hey, if we're going to start this at 2, like be here at 1:45. Like we're always like that. And my kid, I'm trying to instill that into my kid as well. So we always like hit it off. And then when I got to MMA Fighting and I did the What the Heck show, Jon Anik was the first guy I brought on the show. And there's nobody else I wanted besides Jon, because the way him and I flowed in conversations, like it was just always like a really cool thing just to pick his brain about stuff, because I could bring the Boston out of Jon and Jon brings the Boston out of me. So the accents come, maybe a curse word from time to time. I could sneak in a question about the Patriots and how awful they were playing, and it would be fine. Yeah. So I've gotten the chance to know Jon. Jon's given me the time of day anytime I've asked for it. Like he knows that before pay-per-view, I'm going to hit him up and he's going to say yes, and we're going to do a preview. Or if I'm covering an event on site, I'm going to hit Jon up to do a face-to-face. He'll do it, and we're good. Like, that's just how we are. And if Jon ever asked me to go on his show, I would do it in a second. I would drop everything I'm doing, and I would jump on his show in a heartbeat. That's how I feel about Jon. And to hear Jon say what he said about the people it kind of, I was like, why? I was like, why are you guys so mad at everything? Like, it just kind of brought me back to like why we watch sports in the first place. Like, look, Joe Buck and Tim McCarver was a guy who, when I was smack dab into Red Sox fanhood, when they were rivaling with the Yankees big time in the late 90s, early 2000s, I used to watch Joe Buck and Tim McCarver call Red Sox Yankees games. And McCarver would always have like a Yankee, like, he'll never like admit that he was like like he showed favoritism toward the Yankees, but like he would always like say things that irked me. But I didn't go on social media, or I didn't like find Tim McCarver's email address and start blowing up his email, telling him like, dude, stop like being a Yankee lover. Like let's have some bias in the middle, color commentary for God's sake. And Joe Buck and stuff, like, as a 20-year-old dude who thinks I know everything, who am I to like tell Joe Buck how to do his job? He's one of the most successful broadcasters I've ever seen, definitely in my lifetime. So to hear Jon just like come out and be like, man, like I can't even get through a broadcast by just stating a simple opinion. And Jon has actually taken the time to learn the scoring criteria. He brings Sean Sheehan on all the time. He's gone to courses. He's taken the time to learn how scoring works. And all Jon said was, I think DDP won. What is wrong with that? I thought DDP won too, and I got crushed for it. Laura Sanko thought DDP won. She got crushed for it. Like, it's just so dumb that people take this stuff so seriously. So I guess my advice, like, especially after hearing Jon, is I'll defend Jon to forever. I saw his apology, and I'm just like, why are you apologizing? But maybe there's like just a part of him that's just like, let's just move on with our lives. And I respect Jon. Whatever he wants to do is great. But it just reaffirms to me that whether you're a fan of the NFL, if you're not a fan of the Chiefs or Taylor Swift, like, who cares? Relax. It's sports. It doesn't affect your day. I know you like Sean Strickland. I know you're a fan of the man, but him losing a split decision at UFC 297, yeah, it should irk you for a little while if you like Sean Strickland. But you know what Sean Strickland did like the day after losing the belt, or 2 days after losing the belt? He went snowboarding. He moved on with his life. So how come you can't? I don't understand why everyone is so angry about this. The fight is like one of the closest fights I've ever watched. Besides maybe Volkanovski Holloway 2. That's the fight I compare it to. Because I remember just tweeting out that night, guys, it's not a robbery. Like, I thought Volkanovski won. And the amount of hate I got just on that one tweet saying that fight wasn't a robbery was unbelievable. Because everyone wanted Max Holloway to win. And I get it. It's a different sport now. Gambling is so prevalent. You feel like, yeah, I just cashed a dog ticket on Sean Strickland and then he loses. Like, I know it stinks. I know it stinks to lose the bet. It's fine. But like, to attack Jon Anik's character, to call him biased, to say that he's cheering for DDP, Jon ain't cheering for nobody. He respects all these guys and gals just the same as everybody else. So to hear Jon like get so frustrated with that, like, I've had rants myself about all this, but Jon, like, the dude just wants to like call events and go home and hang out with his family and not deal with the BS. And I think with how hard this guy works and what this guy has done for the sport from a broadcasting perspective, I think it's okay for him to be a little frustrated about this. Like, let the man live his life, for God's sake. It's not the end of the world. It's just an opinion about a fight that was super close. If you think Sean Strickland won, I'm not going to call you a jerk and say you should be fired from your job. Yeah. I didn't think he won, but it was a super close fight. I'll listen to your argument. And it's just that small group of fans that are the loudest right now, and it's hard to ignore them, and it's tough. I feel his frustration. I really do. It's something I've had to learn over the last few years, is to like block out that noise, take criticism when it comes. If it's constructive, I've used it a few times. I've used things that like, I was like, oh, you know what? Let me go back and rewatch that and see if like they're right. And I'm like, yep, sure enough, they're right. But most of it isn't. But some of it is, and I get where Jon's coming from, and I didn't think he had any need to apologize, and I don't know, kind of pissed me off.
I don't want to spoil it, because, like I said, we're gonna argue this out, Raine, after Mike leaves. But Mike, I'm gonna tell you right now, just so that you can feel good, that Timmy B's got your back. No apology was needed. If anything, I feel it just made it worse in my opinion. But no apology was needed because, dude, you're a professional. You do whatever you want. Like you don't answer to this vocal minority. You know what I mean? Like you don't need to answer to those people. You don't even know any of them. They're not even real people as far as you know what I mean? Like it's there's not even a real person there that you can look at in the eye and say sorry to. And that's it's a strange world we live in, Mike.
All it did was like it raised more questions, because now it's just like, okay, why? And why did he feel the need? And there's like part of me that's like trying to weigh all these different things. And then there's a part of me that's like, I wonder if the UFC like forced him to do that.
No,
like, is that possible?
Way. No way.
Why? I don't know, man. These are the
I thought
about it. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm not saying that's what happened, but the thought crossed my mind. These are the people that the UFC wants to watch their product. These are the ones that they're gearing towards in some way. And if you disrespect these people, the newer fans, the newer crop of people that you're bringing in, that they're spending $80 a month to watch pay-per-view, and you're chastising them, it's a question. I think it's a fair one to ask. I don't think that I'm not saying that's what happened. Maybe it probably didn't happen, but my initial thought when I saw that apology, I was like, ooh, I wonder if like this was like, you should probably go and do this. It'd be a good thing. But again, I don't know. I haven't talked to Jon about it, and it is what it is.
Know. Mike, I've kept you way too long, and I appreciate this so much. I have 1,000 other questions I wanted to ask you.
Come on, man. I'm good. Let's go.
Okay. I'm just going to ask my one famous last question, Raine. Famous to me and to the people that watch this podcast, Mike. One thing I will say before you go as well, just so you know, this weekend I will be at Fight League Atlantic in New Brunswick, Canada, commentating my first ever MMA show. And I heard that the winner of the Mike Heck KO of the year from 2023, Dylan Shepard, that was your pick apparently for KO of the year. That dude is fighting on the card. He's defending his title for the first ever time. He's defending his title. So that's a good link to Mr. Mike Heck and my future. So very cool.
There you go. Well, congrats on the gig, man.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Mike Heck, I'm going to ask you a question that my mother used to ask me every day of my life almost growing up. And I'm going to ask it to you. So Mike, what the heck? On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you?
How happy am I?
Yeah.
Oh, man. 9.5. I feel like, look, not everything, because you can't be perfect. I'd love to say 10 and be like, yeah, but life just ain't like that. And if it was a 10, then what are we doing here? That means like, I'm not learning a thing. I'm not learning anything if it's a 10. So at least the 9.5, like today's a good day. I woke up. The fact that I get to wake up and get on my 2 feet every day is a blessing. Get my kid ready for school and bring him to school, walk the dog, like see my wife. Like these are blessings. Like just if that's my whole day, then it's a pretty darn good day. And then I get to work with the people I work with and talk to great people like you about the sport that I love so much. And, you know, get to go to the gym and work out and like do all these things that not everybody is able to do. Like I don't take that stuff for granted. So today is a 9.5 day. There are days where it's a 6. There's days where it's 7, days where it's a 3 or 4, but that's where you learn the most. That's how you grow the most, is those 3 and 4 days. And if you get to a 9.5 day, like it is today for me, then hey, we've done something right here. So love that question. Much appreciated. But today's a 9.5. No doubt about it.
I'm so happy. Mike Heck, it was an absolute honor and a privilege to meet you. I can see why you are the kind of guy that got to where you got in your life. I think that good people get good things. And so Raine and I are just waiting for someone to tell us that we're good. That's all we're waiting for.
You guys are good. You guys are good. Look, you're commentating from Promotion. She's doing the cage announcing. Like you guys, you're doing fine. You're doing fine.
Mike, thank you so much for joining the podcast. I do hope that you can come again one day, because I really think like we had a good banter. I love your thoughts on things and the way that you look at things. I appreciate it. There's always stuff that comes up that I'd love to ask you. So please stay in touch. And if I need to shave my head to become part of the Jon Anik Mike Heck crew, I will do it. If that's part of the thing, I will do it. Raine, will you shave your head as well?
Sure.
Done.
You can always wear wigs for my event. So
listen, enjoy the hair while you have it, my man. I once had hair. It's a true story. I once was able to like gel it up and do what you're doing right now. But those days are over, and I've accepted it, and we live to fight another day, right?
There you go. Mike, thank you so much for joining the podcast. It's really, really a great pleasure. Thank you so much. It was very thankful. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. See ya. All right, Raine, that is Mr. Mike Heck.
What the heck?
What the heck? He's gone? Raine, what a cool guy, though, no?
I know.
Seriously,
I'm
really
glad we
cool.
got him on the podcast.
Everything that he talked about, super, super cool. He touched on a few things. Now, I do want to say to the people watching, thank you for coming to watch, first of all. Secondly, as a part of that interview, we would not ask about the questions with Sean Strickland and who he just said was his best friend, A.K. Lee. So some people had written in and say, hey, are you going to ask about that subject? And in all honesty, that is the subject that I had asked him to come on for. But he had politely said, hey, we've addressed that on my show and other shows, so I don't want to talk about that. This interview was still kick-ass anyways, Raine. Seriously, this interview pumped me up. Like, I'm very happy with that one. How are you, Raine? Raine, last weekend you had a wonderful time, kicked ass at your announcing. And I do want to say, I'm going to throw it up here. This is our two friends of the podcast,
Way!
Jade Picasso and Khalil Pearson. What, Raine? What do you have there?
I have this.
Oh,
So from where I was sitting cage side, they have like all these portraits, like kind of
okay.
like around the cage, right?
Yeah, for those on
And-
audio only, it's the picture of Khalil Pearson.
Pearson. So Khalil's picture happened to be taped close to where I was sitting. And it kept falling, from the side of the cage like throughout the night. And finally I was like, I'm just gonna put this on my desk. And then after the show, I asked, my friends at Up Next Fighting, I was like, do you mind if I just take this home? And then they're like, yeah, take it home. I was like, cool, awesome.
Raine, wink if you're lying that it kept falling down and that you actually just ripped it off. And then wink again if you really never asked anybody at Up Next Fighting if you could keep it, and you're just saying this so we don't think you're a criminal. Raine, what a cool night. Two of our guests won. Jade wins by first round submission. Khalil wins by first round ground and pound TKO, slams the dude hard and finishes him. So happy for both of them. They are both such good people. Raine, you saw them in the cage and you did not get a fist bump.
No, I did not. And that's the thing. It's kind of like hard sometimes, as you're announcing someone, right? And then you're like looking at them and it's like, I think they get in their zone. I get in my zone too. And it's like, to me, my priority is like to announce the fight. The fist bump, if it happens, great. If not, it's okay too. Although when Khalil won, like after I announced him as the winner, he was like in the middle of the cage and then he saw me afterwards and then he gave me a hug. So that was really nice. Yeah, that was really nice. And then for Jade, I don't recall. I think I saw her after the show. And I congratulated her. But yeah, I didn't get any fist bumps. I actually got a fist bump from Khalil after the show because I saw him after the show.
This does not count.
I know, but at the same time, it's like,
you're not counting fist bumps in the parking lot.
I know. But what I'm saying is like, it's the kind of stuff that you can't just like plan and do. It's like something that, it calls for the right moment. And, it's like, I'm going to use the, like, it's not the exact line, but remember when Dricus Duplessis said he's just focused on this one thing, what he needs to do. And I think, myself and the fighters, we're all focused on that one thing that we need to do.
Yes.
The other things, like the fist bumps or whatever, if it's the right time, if it's the right opportunity, it's going to happen.
Okay. All right. So Khalil Pearson, if you're watching this podcast, I'm sorry for yelling at you for not fist bumping Raine. I sent him a lot of swear words and stuff. So Khalil, I am sorry. No, I'm just kidding. Khalil did say, he said he was hesitant. He wrote back to me because I said, what the heck? And he said, I was hesitant in the cage because you know how they make you stay in your corner. I didn't want to walk to the middle in case anything, blah, blah, blah. But I did hug her. So, and he says, next time. So Raine, it's coming.
There you go. Yeah. And then, for Jade, I remember when I was announcing her, I could see her. She was like nodding and smiling at me.
Yeah.
And there were other fighters too, who, some of them, they kind of like stepped towards the middle. They were just feeling it, some of them, they stayed on their corner and they were raising their hands. And it's really cool. it's really cool when I see fighters do that as I'm announcing them, because
Yeah.
I'm doing this for them.
Yeah, of course. And Rain, you have such a great role in this, right? Like what you're doing is so cool, Rain. So I'm so happy. But in general, you're happy, A+, everything good. You did well. You were happy. You look good. You were styled out with a different jacket again. How many goddamn sparkly jackets do you own?
I don't know. I have to start counting because
Oh,
I
okay.
need a spot now to put all of them together.
You should have it in your background, like just all your sparkly
Right?
jackets. I do want to say, Rain, when I was looking for a emergency guest co-host for last week, because my guest co-host bailed on me very last minute, unfortunate. They couldn't come. No problem. I did reach out to a few people. Of course, I reached out to Up Next Fighting people because I was thinking, I want to have an Up Next fighter to kind of help support you and the show that you were doing. I did actually also get in touch with Jade's opponent.
Oh, Kayleen?
Yes. So, and I want to say the name correctly, but yes, Jade's opponent. What was her name? I apologize.
Kayleen Cabral.
Yes, Jaylene. She
Kayleen.
was also very lovely, and she was going to possibly be the co-host as well. So I do want to say thank you to her as well. Thank you to Jade for showing up, but thank you to her opponent as well, and good luck in the next one. Like, all of you guys are kick-ass. So one little setback is nothing. Keep doing your thing, and you guys will all be fantastic and successful. Rain, next weekend, I do want to shout out Fight League Atlantic. Blah, I'm already wearing my shirt.
There you go. You're ready to go.
Oh boy, I'm so excited, Rain. I do want to say I love everybody. I've been contacting the fighters, getting their background stories and things like that, which has been such a joy to me to be able to do that. I'm nervous, but I'm super excited. I'm going to be co-commentating with Mr. Chris Kalidas. He's a former UFC fighter and M1 champ. He's like a very veteran commentator for Fight League Atlantic, so I'm happy to share it with him. And I did want to say thank you to UFC commentators TJ DeSantis and John Gooden and ONE FC commentator Mitch Chilson. They've all been guests on this podcast. I reached out to all three of them to ask them, like some tips and stuff. And all three of them were so lovely and gave me plenty of tips, which I really appreciate. I will share TJ DeSantis's tips with you, Rain. The best. He said, Tim, nobody's going to care what you do. When you do a good job, nobody will care. But when you fuck it up, you're done. My advice to you, Tim, don't fuck it up. And
that is true, though. That is true.
Yeah. Because he said, because he said, remember when I was on your podcast, I told you my job is to drive the bus. It's to feature the other people. Like, you're there and you're doing your thing, but your job is to feature everybody else. And so I really appreciate, but all the advice I got from John Good and Miss Chilson, it was very cool. And I just love having all these friends in the industry now, Rain. It's like so cool, right? You have it all the time. You're always talking to people and doing your thing. So
yeah, and that's a good thing because it's like, you get feedback, and at the same time, it teaches you to pay it forward, down the line.
That's right. Definitely. 100%. Rain, next week on the podcast, I don't know for sure what we're doing, but I will tell you a few guests we have lined up. We have Max Payne Griffin lined up. He fights very soon. He's a former guest of the podcast. He's a friend of yours, a friend of mine. He's coming on. I have Swayze Valentine, the only cut woman in the UFC. She's been on 2 years ago for our Valentine show. She's coming back on for a Valentine show again. And we have Cody Durden. He's fighting at UFC 300. He's scheduled to come on. Do you have other people? I've got a few. So we've got a bunch of guests lined up. Plus, Rain, like whatever happens with me at Fight League Atlantic, I'll probably meet some cool people there. Maybe I'll get one of the winners or something like that to come on the show as well. Talk about it. Rain, everything is so cool. I really love Mike Heck's answer to the 1 out of 10 question as well. That was a very cool answer. I really like the way he answered that. That was smart. Rain, the Jon Anik issue. Now we can talk about it unfiltered without his good friend Mike Heck here. Rain, you saw what happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll put it up on the screen for those watching on YouTube or Spotify or whatnot. But he goes off on his podcast in a very kind of like what Mike Heck was saying. Maybe it was just like a throwaway thing. It wasn't meant to be clipped out as it was. But fact of the matter is, he does go on to say that when he made the call about Duplessis, the fans started leaning into him. He goes, there's just a morass of negativity. I appreciate the passion, but I'm getting to the point where I'm 45 years of age. I don't know how much time left I have in the MMA space. I'm not necessarily going to be dealing with the lowest common denominator of all time. He's talking about you, the MMA fans, right? He goes off on it, and it was very negative. Raine, I'm going to give it to you first. Just that negative comment. Forget the apology later, but that comment that he made, your thoughts on that?
So here's the thing. I think it's a negative comment towards something that's also negative, right? Because like he wouldn't say
Sure.
something
Yep,
like
yep, yep.
that,
Mm-hmm.
if it's not something that he felt like, oh God, this is too much. This is too much toxicity. This
Yeah.
is too much negativity. And for someone like him, there's always going to be negative stuff thrown at him.
Yeah.
And I feel like he's still a human being. At some
Mm-hmm.
point, he's going to have his breaking point. And,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what happened there.
Yeah.
And, like what Mike had said earlier, you just got to learn how to kind of block it. Um, an example for me personally, when I won the WWE announcer contest, I was like looking on my social media. Oh my God, people were like, oh my God, she's great, la 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 la. And then I started seeing negative comments, right?
Mm.
And at first I was like, oh my God, people think of
Yeah.
me this way. And then I saw another one and another one, and I was like, oh my God. And then I realized I started focusing on the negative stuff, whereas I
Mm.
had tons of like positive comments.
Mm-hmm.
And I expressed that to my husband. I was like, man, like, was I terrible? Like, did I not deserve this win? And then he said, if you are going to be in a public eye, you got to learn how to block negative stuff. At the end
Yeah.
of the day, what matters is that you're doing something good. That you're not hurting anyone.
Right.
So you got to learn how to block negative stuff. And again, going back to John's comments, it's something negative in response to something that's negative.
Mm.
The
But
thing is,
okay.
it's like the spotlight kind of leans more towards him because he has the hot mic. He's a
Yeah.
broadcaster.
And well, and he's an individual. He's a person. When
Mm-hmm.
he's talking about the fans, kind of like what I said to Mike, there's no one individual. You're not saying, hey, Timmy B in Toronto said this to me. He's just going, oh, the fans. It's just like a generalization. But so
Mm-hmm.
yes, the focus obviously gets put on Jon because yeah, you are one man that we can identify you.
Mm-hmm. And like the thing is, it's like, looking at his position, right? It's like, do people think that he shouldn't have any feelings? It's like that's kind of like hard for him, for people for people who
Sure.
are on camera, right? People
Yeah.
think that, what? It's okay if I talk bad about you, whatever. I'm just watching you anyway, whatever. What are you going to say to me? But
Yeah.
then if these people whom you are watching and talked bad about
Yeah.
starts talking bad about you, then you feel attacked. You're like, oh
Well,
my God, this person is attacking me, But again, like you said, Jon never said at Timmy B. What the
no.
hell?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I know we don't have too much time because you've got to go. What do we got? We got like 15 minutes left?
Like 15, 20 minutes, yeah.
Okay. Here's the thing, Raine. I agree with everything you said. I agree with what Mike said. I wanted to come in a little bit hotter and more angry, but it's good that we met Mike first because then he says, "Oh, Jon is a good guy," and blah blah. Okay, so I won't go as hard as I want to. When I saw the comments, I see it because I start seeing the flood of "We love you, Jon. Jon, you're the GOAT. Jon, you're the greatest. I only watch UFC because you're there, Jon. I love you, Jon." All these freaking losers, right? That feel they have to come to Jon's defense because Jon, in this moment, states that he's so sad and that, wait, he's going to retire because of this and blah,
Mhm.
blah, blah. And all these white knights come to his defense. And I'm like, in my brain, Raine, the way that I took it was really, I don't want to say a bad word, but I don't know how to say it. Pathetic. Like, pathetic to more the fans defending him. Like,
Mm.
I'm like, if this dude wants to be sad about it and say something, fine, let him say something. Although, to your end, I don't think you should let people impact you that way. People that are truly like non-existent to you. You know what I mean? Like, it's if you had like your friends and colleagues coming to you saying, "Hey, you're lousy," and blah blah. Yes, you should let that affect you, or you should deal with that. But this online space, you got to like let that pass, man. But what was really weird to me was the way the people started defending him. And I'm like, okay, but if he feels better because you're saying feel better, okay, now follow me with this logic. John's feeling bad, right? Saying I might quit UFC because the lowest common denominator of fans is like bothering me and telling me I'm suck and I don't want to deal with this and blah, blah, blah. If he now feels better because you and a bunch of your buddies are saying how lovely he is,
Mm.
doesn't that just show that he's still too affected by what the internet is telling him? Like, if the only reason he feels better now is because the internet has given him some self-worth, it's like, dude, you're still looking for self-worth in the wrong spot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You have to find that from internal, inside of you. Like, it shouldn't matter what people online say, good or bad. And here's the thing, dude. I wish I could get people telling me they hate me because it means people are at least listening to me. And he is out there doing his podcast, doing his stuff. He's making money off people tuning in and stuff. So it's kind of weird because, like, specifically, he has put himself there to garner attention. Obviously, it's not always going to be good attention. But if it takes its toll, it takes its toll. Everybody has their limit. But it just seemed like a whole weird thing. And it just seemed weird that people were like, well, if I tell him that he's the GOAT of announcing, then he'll feel better. And it's like, but he shouldn't feel better because you said it. He shouldn't
Well,
have felt bad that people said it.
I think it's just a matter of, realizing, or I guess getting reminded that there are people who like support you. I don't think he's trying to like get like those comments from people. I think it's mostly people, posted those comments to show that, hey, yeah, we get it. There's people who can be negative about the sport or can be negative about the result. And they're, posting these comments about what you had said. But please do remember that there are people who also, support you, and we like the way you, yeah. I don't know. I guess like for me,
I
it's
know,
good
but
to be reminded that someone's supporting you.
I know, but you shouldn't get it from internet. I have to open the window for my cat. Give me one second. You shouldn't have to get it from the internet, though. This is what I mean.
I do understand that. But the thing, it's like, it's a public space. Like the world that we live in now, you post something online. If it's public, everyone's gonna post comments. And the thing is,
I know.
how sure are we that he read those comments?
Obviously, he read it because he read the bad ones.
Oh yeah.
And then hold on. And then, okay, so then let's lead into this though. Sorry, I'll let you continue. But then it leads into, obviously he did read the good comments because then he goes and posts what Mike Heck talked about was the apology.
Mm-hmm.
He apologizes. I need to be more responsible on an open microphone. So much work goes blah, blah, blah. I'm just a fiery, passionate, and flawed guy. And sometimes my emotions lead the dance. Raine, as a married woman, if your husband wrote that, wouldn't you be a little turned off? Like, it just seems so wimpy to
I
do
don't know.
this.
I wouldn't
If
feel
your
turned
husband
off.
wrote that,
No, because to me, it's like, look.
I fear that my wife would throw me out of because she'd be like, "Go stand up for yourself, bro." Like, I don't know. That apology irked the hell out of me.
Really? Okay.
Oh, the apology kills me, Raine. The apology makes me so annoyed. I get what Mike is saying. Maybe the UFC made him do it, but I don't think they did because Dana White is very about, freedom of speech and blah, blah, blah. So I don't think anybody made Jon Anik post an apology.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think Mike Heck really thought so either. He's just saying maybe.
But the thing is, here's a situation we're in. Damn if you do, damn if you don't. right? Because if he did not like issue an apology or posted that apology, then people will be like, oh my God, he didn't even like apologize, blah, 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 blah. So, and that's the thing. It's like for me, at least what I learned so far throughout this journey of like being like out there in the public,
A
where
famous
people just
person
like,
and
I'm not a famous
a
person, but it's
famous
like,
superstar such as yourself. Got it. Go on.
but when people are like watching you, especially in the world of social media,
I know, but
they would feel like, oh my God, I have the
Ray,
right to like post this comment, whatever. And you just gotta either like be like Bilal. You know how Bilal is like, he does not care.
first of all,
Bilal does not care what you say about him.
Rain, I'm gonna cut that part of this podcast, and I'm gonna put you saying "be like Bilal." Rain, you're gonna get hammered online.
No, I'm just
Nobody should be like Bilal ever.
no, I'm just saying, like, we talked about Bilal
I
before,
know,
like
I know.
how he's like posting his comments and he just doesn't care.
And he
But
is
because
murdered.
and
Yeah,
that's the thing, if you're gonna be in a public eye, you
yeah.
gotta have that Bilal shield right there. You know, I don't care how bad you talk about me, I'm gonna do my thing.
Rain,
Um,
I want you to issue an apology to the fans, viewers, and listeners of the Fight Insight podcast for talking about Bilal on this podcast multiple times. I want it on your story.
on my Instagram story, okay.
I'm gonna post this goddamn clip, Rain. I'm gonna
And
demand
you
an
should clip
apology.
this and you should tag Bilal. There you go.
No, Rain, there's no, oh God. It's crazy because like for nobody, no normal person, right? That wasn't yelling at no normal human being who was, I don't even know how to explain this. No normal person was being offended by Jon Anik calling those other people the lowest common denominator. I'm
Uh-huh.
quoting it, right? Like I didn't yell at John, but when John says, "Oh, the fans are the lowest common denominator," I know he's talking about the idiots that were trashing him.
Yeah.
So, John, your apology is not to me. And then John, are you apologizing to the people that you got mad at who were being rude to you? Because guess what? You don't need to apologize to those idiots. And
Yeah, I get
again,
the point on that one. Yeah.
I don't know, Rain. No, Rain, give me a break. There's no that it looks so weird and weak. I don't know.
But the thing is, for someone like John, it's also part of his apology. It's like his something about like his integrity is
I
where is
don't know.
that part?
I
Right?
put it
Or
back.
it can be tough when my integrity on broadcast is called into question. This is something that he's passionate about, right? And I think that's why, he just got to his breaking point and made his comments. And I guess when he took a look back to what had happened, he was probably able to see, how, oh God, at the end of the day, I'm a journalist and it's not like he's getting paid to just express his opinions, right? It's mostly, for him to be a journalist out there calling a fight. Yeah, he can throw his opinions here and there, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's his job.
That said, this coming Saturday, so when this comes out, this Saturday, when you guys are all tuning in to Fight League Atlantic, fightleagueatlantic.com, purchase the pay-per-view for FLA 13, and you see the incredible fights from Canadians across this great country, but specifically the East Coast. If you pick on something that I say in my commentary and smash me for it, I will not apologize to any of you. Oh, never apologizing.
I'm gonna create a reel, make it viral, send it to Mike Heck. Mike, please make this thing go viral.
Yeah,
Timmy
exactly.
B saying this.
Yeah, I was hoping he would give us some better advice for that, to how to get our stuff to go viral, because we've had a few things that go, that hit and then boop, 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 it goes out. But then we have other things that are such lovely stories, like last week's pension podcast, right? Where we talk about it. Nobody knows that there's a goddamn pension in California. And we had the guy that wrote the bill. There was a story when Brian Bam Bam Barberena was going to be wearing the Korean flag on his walk to the cage because he was doing it in honor of his wife that has Korean roots, and for his children that are half Korean. Like those beautiful stories they don't get picked up. There's just so much news. And that, I guess that was part of the thing with Mike too, right? Like there's just so many bloody like things that are happening that you just don't even have time to sit back and smell the roses for a second, because you're on to the next thing. You're on to the next drama, you know? Anyways, do we want to yell about Jon Anik anymore? Or no, you're good.
No, I mean, I'm not yelling at him. I just, you know, I feel bad most
You
of the
said
time.
he was a baby and he was a wimp. That's what
No,
you
I
said.
did not.
That's what I heard. Quote that part. Done.
No. I feel bad for him, you know, because it's a lot of pressure just to be, you know, under the microscope like that, you know.
But
And
that's your job. But that's your job. Your
yeah,
job.
that's
Your
the
job
thing.
is to do it. You're putting yourself out there. It's not just your commentary, but you have a podcast. You're on the social medias. You're whatever, and you're doing that because you are making money off that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I delete very few comments from our Instagram and stuff like that. The only ones I delete are ones that get like overly racist or like kind of like really rude, you know, like I'll get rid of some of those. But for the most part, I leave stuff. Hey, if you want to be rude about things, you want to be nice about things, go ahead. It's freedom of speech. You do whatever it is. I mean, you only reveal your own character
Yeah.
when you're an ass, you know? So I don't know. Take it on the chin. Roll with the punches. Whatever dumb other phrases I can say. Raine, I think we are out of here. We're good on time. We're going to cut our intro into this baby. And this was a lovely podcast. Raine, I'm so glad you're back. You were away last week. I did not like it.
It was weird not doing the podcast last week.
I
It's
did
like
not
something's
approve your
missing.
time off, if anybody asked. The HR department did not approve that. Raine, a lovely time as always. You are absolutely the best. When is your next fighting? What's the next?
I know the next event will be on February 24th at Commerce Casino, UNF 16.
Okay. Very nice, very nice. Hopefully people will see you there. This week, again, please go check me out. Fight League Atlantic, fightleagueatlantic.com to purchase the pay-per-view. Do it. Send some stuff to them on their socials. Say that you're here because of Timmy B. You know, give me some love and support. Ben Leese is fighting. Mr. Entertainment Ben Leese. Raine, he said he missed you on the podcast, but Mr. Entertainment Ben Leese is going to be there. He's going to be kicking ass. And the mustached man himself, Rory Gillis, will be in his corner.
Does he have a nickname now?
No worry, Rory, no worry, Gillis. He will be in the corner of Ben Leese. We can't wait to see those guys. I can't wait to go back to beautiful East Coast Canada. Raine, thank you so much for a lovely podcast. You're the best, and this is a great one.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you, Khalil. Goodbye. See ya.